Welcome to Bed and Butter, the hospitality podcast, designed exclusively for budding students and aspiring industry leaders. We're thrilled to embark on this exciting journey with you. Each episode, we'll delve into the heart of hospitality industry with your host, Sean Riley, uncovering invaluable insights, trends, and strategies to not only succeed, but thrive in this dynamic field. The podcast is produced in collaboration with Southern Maine Community College. Listen to national leaders highlight opportunities for the active hospitality professional, students of SMCC's Culinary Arts program, as well as the L. Joe Van Wy School of Hospitality. This program is a labor of love, made possible with the help of the Communications and New Media Studies students. Whether you're sharpening your skills or stepping into the world of hospitality for the first time, Bed and Butter is your go-to resource. So let's dive in and spread the knowledge, one episode at a time.
It's not often someone comes into a career with a finance background and branding experience. Add to that a personality of an inspirational leader, and to top it off, the experience of a server in a restaurant business. Well, our guest today, Whitney Knight, has it all. She's currently Director of Brand Management for the Homewood Suites by Hilton brand. We'll talk about what goes into managing a brand and evolving a brand. We can learn from this Hilton executive about building your career within the Hilton hotels, ranked the #1 place to work in the world. So sit back, relax, and get inspired. Hi, Whitney.
It's good to see you. Good to talk to you.
Great. Yeah, I'm excited to have you. Now, we did the intro earlier, but I've had the pleasure of knowing you for a while now, and you are just like a spot of happiness. You just full of happiness, you smile, you engage people, you just do a great job. And so I couldn't ask for anybody better to join me for our listeners. So I'm excited to have you, and thanks for being here. Now, your role, obviously, you can tell me a little bit more about it, but your role, you didn't start out in hospitality. Well, you kind of did. Didn't you start out as a server at one point?
I did. I worked my way through high school and college, pretty much every restaurant job you could imagine. I was a server, I was a bartender, I was a waitress, I was an expediter, a trainer, you name it. So that was really the foundation of my career. But then I ultimately ended up starting kind of my postgraduate career in finance, which is a little bit unusual. Did that for a couple of years. And ultimately, I decided it wasn't what I wanted to be doing for the next several decades of my career, right? Like a career is a long span of time. So I made a big change. I think a lot of people, probably including my husband, thought I was crazy. And I've actually spent the majority of my professional career focused on working in franchise brands, including the hospitality industry.
That's cool. And, I think the waiting on tables or washing dishes or whatever, a lot of people started doing a night audit. That's just the way to get through college, but it ends up turning into a career. And you probably didn't know that when you went into all those other areas, but you kind of had that passion for what the excitement and the life was in the industry. So that's cool. So I think, you said something about you gave you a passion for the business. And even though you you have those nightmares that servers have, oh God, I forgot ketchup to A number 2, but you had all of those, but you kind of took that a lot further and developed a passion far beyond that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, working in the service industry was really, I think it's so foundational to my career, and it's foundational to 1 in 3 Americans' careers, right? 1 in 3 Americans start their professional lives in the food services industry. And having that experience, I think you learn so much so quickly. You learn a lot about time management. You learn a lot about people skills, and you learn a lot about teamwork and working as a team with the front of the house, the back of the house, bringing that all together.
One other thing you mentioned here, let's not forget to talk about your community called Ask. I want to do that in a minute. But so your stint through this industry, you decided you started a stint in finance, and then you pivoted and did some other things. Give me a brief description of that.
Sure. So I worked in finance for about 4 or 5 years. I worked in equity valuation.
You do not look like a bean counter. That's too big a
right?
spot. No pocket protector or anything. You are not fitting in there.
I was probably the most extroverted person in my office, which is really saying something. So after a couple of years, and I always say that's the MBA I didn't pay for, right? It was a great experience. I learned so much. But after a couple of years, I made the decision to go work for a full service branding and advertising firm, spent several years there. And then I joined Hilton about 7 or 8 years ago. And it's been a great journey ever since.
At one point you said something, you're a brand enthusiast. And I think, obviously that's not your job title, but you really are an enthusiast for the brand. And I mean, what is branding and how did you do that job?
So my actual title is Director of Brand Management for Homewood Suites. I think people thought I was crazy when I had a background in finance and I switched to marketing, but I thought it would actually serve me really well in the long term to have exposure and kind of experience in both sides of business. And that couldn't be truer in my current role, right? Because I have to think about things from our guest perspective, from our team members' perspective, from our owner's perspective, and because Hilton's a publicly traded company, from our stockholders' perspective. So I think that background has served me really well. My day to day, I will say, like anybody in the hospitality industry, no 2 days are the same, but my job focuses on making sure that all of our internal teams within Hilton are aligned in terms of how they support Homewood Suites. So that's everything from revenue management to food and beverage. And then also, and probably most importantly, making sure that our team members and our owners have everything they need to be successful within Homewood Suites and that they're really proud to be a part of this brand.
I don't know if people know that when they're outside of the brand world is that there's so much that goes into leading a brand like you do. It's not, I mean, it's pulling the little pieces together. It's deciding what you do with the buildings, what you do with the decor, what you do with programs. Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, you did say you work for the owners and the teams. I highlighted that on my notes that you wrote that down. And, it's like all stakeholders. And you even mentioned shareholders, which is important because without the shareholders, you wouldn't be able to grow. And you're a pretty important job.
Yeah, well, thank you. I don't know about that, but I will say, Homewood Suites today, we have almost 550 hotels open. We have about 150 in our pipeline. So with that size, things take time and decisions take time. When you're operating at that scale, even a small decision can have some pretty radical consequences. So we really take time to do our research and to be very diligent and to try to think about decisions from every possible perspective.
One of the things you said, like even partnership with Grubhub. Now, didn't you do a partnership with Pet Supplies or something like that came up? Or
We did. So Homewood Suites and Home2 Suites are what we call pet hero brands here at Hilton. We are 100% pet friendly, and it's such an important part of our guest experience. In 2021, we started a partnership with Mars Pet Care, who is our official pet partner, and that has been tremendous. And then I will also say in 2022 and 2023, Homewood Suites began a partnership with Grubhub. We provide free delivery to all of our guests at our US properties. So that's a really incredible offering. And that's the type of things that my job kind of focuses on a day-to-day basis is bringing some of those partnerships to life and really thinking about how we differentiate the guest experience at Homewood Suites.
now you say that because you have certain competitors. So yours would be the Residence Inn, that's the head-to-head, or Staybridge, I think, with those three. Part of your job is say, how can we be different? Still the same thing. Now, the extended stay, can you just explain that real quickly? Extended stay.
You nailed it. Our direct competitors are Residence Inn and Staybridge. The way that we think about extended stay, and I should clarify for our listeners, Homewood Suites is what we call upscale extended stay. So we really sit at the very top of that segment. And the way that we think about extended stay at Hilton is anything 5 or more nights, because that gives us that shoulder night coverage. And so it's a really important part of our business model and our business mix and what makes and what historically has made extended stay so attractive to our owners, because we are really a brand that delivers incredible value for owners, incredible financial performance, and we also deliver incredible value for our guests. Our guests, whether they're with us for one night or 90 nights, are getting great access to amenities and a ton of space and really good service and consistency.
So I think that goes back to what we talked about branding. You as a branding expert from your previous life, it's the same thing. You want to brand who you are as a business in general, but also as compared to your competitors. So some of those things you've jumped in there really is important. So your history in your life with Hilton, you came to Hilton, and how did your previous life help you begin with Hilton? And then you had a little hiatus during COVID, which came back, and you talked a little bit about that. Can you give me a 2-minute version of that, your life with Hilton so far?
Sure. So let's see. I started in Hilton in internal communications, and that was actually a great role for me as somebody who hadn't spent as much time in the hotel industry, because at the time, every single communication that went to a Hilton property came through my inbox, came across my desk. So that meant that I had to learn everything about the hospitality industry very quickly. I spent about 2 years in that role, and then I moved on to a role in customer experience and innovation, where I was solely focused on Hilton Garden Inn, a great brand of ours here at Hilton. And that was such a good experience for me because it was really more long-term project focused work. I got to work with a great hospitality leader, John Greenleaf. And then, of course, and Sean, you already alluded to this, the pandemic happened. And I think it's something really important to talk about, right? The impact of that to our industry and to people's careers in our industry. I was furloughed, so I made a voluntary decision to go ahead and leave my role. I had a great opportunity to go into support some franchise brands in the home services space. And so I did that for about 18 months. And it was such a good experience for me because these were slightly smaller brands. Hilton is a great place to work. In fact, we've been named the #1 place to work in the world. But because we're such a big organization, it can be hard to get a variety of experiences and a variety of different kind of types of responsibilities. By moving to a smaller brand for a while, I was able to really get a lot of different responsibilities and experiences in a very short period of time. It was trial by fire for sure. And I wouldn't have had it any other way. I always say I probably got the equivalent of a decade of experience in about 18 months. So even though that was a great experience for me, after 18 months, I did go ahead and accept a role to come back to Hilton. I joined our brand personality team supporting three
That's the
great
word,
brands.
brand personality.
Yes. Yeah. And people say, like, what does that mean? What does brand personality do? But in short, at Hilton, we believe so strongly in the importance and the impact of a great service culture that we have teams dedicated to just that. So I was really focused on our service culture as well as our service scores and our guest experience. And then about a year ago, Sean, as you probably know, Rick Calling convinced me to join him and focus on Homewood full time. And that wasn't a really hard sell because, as you know, Rick is an excellent leader.
I think that brand personality thing it is the job. You have to be that kind of person. I've seen some of the other folks that are doing it for other brands. They too have a personality that's just bubbly, and you're the one I decided to call. Just remember that. So,
Well, thank you.
tell me a little bit about, how do you develop a brand? Now, you obviously the brand is developed and it's a seasoned brand, but what things do you do? You kind of talked about 10.0 and the different things that happen, and so with the branding, there's multiple things. There's the building, there's the decor, and then there's the amenities. Can you just give a 30-second blip on each one?
Absolutely. I once had a franchisee tell me a good franchisor, which is what we are here at Hilton, provides 4 things: great training, great product, great marketing, and a sales funnel. So those are kind of how we think about things, or how I like to think about things. So in terms of product, Sean, you mentioned our new prototype 10.0. Homewood is a prototypical brand when it comes to our building. There's some flexibility there, of course, but that new prototype is gorgeous. And that's exactly the type of work our team focuses on, bringing a product to market that's going to be really compelling. Our new prototype breaks the mold in a couple of ways. It's a really efficient build for our owners. It's gorgeous in terms of the guest suites. And it has some really innovative amenities, things like a self-pour tap wall so you can serve yourself beer or wine. It has in-suite laundry in some of the suites. So truly an upscale residential experience. And it has guest storage. So that's another space that's new for us that we're really excited about. So those are some of the ways we think about moving the brand forward. We also, of course, especially at Homewood Suites, pay a lot of attention to our food and beverage ecosystem. So we think about ways that we can elevate that in-suite kitchen experience. Every one of our suites has a fully equipped kitchen. And then also things like breakfast. We have been on a 2-year breakfast journey that will be coming to market this year. We're very excited about that. And those are some of the ways that we really think about the brand outside of just I think sometimes people think about very obvious things like the logo, the colors, those types of things, which obviously Homewood has gone through a very big brand change in the last 5 years. So that's another thing we're excited about, is really pushing this great brand that has such a beautiful legacy forward for the next 30 or 40 years.
I think if you look back at there are so many things, you look back at restaurant chains or whatever that were great 20 years ago and they're gone. And a lot of it was because they didn't continue the evolution of the brand or the evolution of the buildings. And I think it's cool. I think one of the neat things I've found at working with Hilton is that you listen. I sat on an advisory board, perhaps another one soon. They kind of ask the owners, where do you stand? What do you guys think? What do you people think? And we have men and women in big hotel companies and small hotel companies. And what you want to do is you folks want to listen and say, what kind of problems do we have? And what kind of opportunities do we have? And then build it. I think your discussion of decreasing the footprint and still making it a good room, allowed owners to build more cost-effective hotels. And that's important to owners. So all the things you mentioned, I think are pretty exciting. And I think, the owners kind of want to pull you back to, whoa, 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 not too much. But I think you listen, but you also have to make decisions to keep the brand relevant. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
we have two
It
Homewoods.
takes some courage to make some of those decisions. And it's certainly a balance in terms of listening to our owners and our guests. I think another way that we think about brands specifically in franchising is our job is to de-risk, right? To de-risk for our owners, make sure that you feel really great about the business model and opportunity that we're delivering you. And also to de-risk for the consumer so that when you're checking into Homewood Suites, you know what to expect. You know to expect excellence.
I think it is interesting that in a cycle that we have never talked about on any other shows, that the brands evolve, and then you're an existing hotel. We have a Homewood that is 4 years old, and we have a Homewood that is 12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And each one of those things were built slightly different because of the evolution. They're not like prototype number 10. However, you've allowed for some creativity within those structures to make it look more and feel more. To your point of, we want to know when you walk in a Homewood, you're in a Homewood. And
Exactly.
they can't do it overnight. And it takes 5 or 6 years to really get everybody in on the same page. But I think it's good that you do that. I think it's good that you folks listen. And again, how can anybody complain when you're sitting there smiling and so friendly? And then Rick is there with that accent. He's just so cute accent. It's just such a cute accent from across.
I think he gets away with a lot because of that British accent.
Oh, he can even swear and you go, oh, isn't that cute? So, not that he does, but he really does. So I think the fact that you listen, and that's probably one of the things for you folks, is one of the reasons you have been voted number one place to work in the world. And I think I went to
Thank you.
I went to an owners meeting a couple months ago, and everybody had their little number one button. And Chris Nassetta, the CEO, wore that with pride, knowing that his team has been able to pull that together, and you were proud of that for sure. It was a question about how would you, a young person, a lot of our listeners might be young, some not so young. There could be people second careers or whatever, but how would you prepare someone for being part of Hilton? They might work for a hotel like that, one of ours, and then get excited, and then they decide to go to work for Hilton in some way. But how could you help someone young get to that next level with Hilton?
I'm, of course, like you, Sean, a big believer in networking. I think you can't underestimate the impact that can have in your career over time. Hotel experience, of course, is a naturally valuable foundation, although uniquely that hasn't necessarily been my path, and it's certainly not required. But increasingly, I think that critical thinking and problem solving are so valuable across all the disciplines here at Hilton. And I really think it's a part of our culture because it's okay not to know the answer today, but it's not okay not to have a plan on how you're going to find out that answer tomorrow. And then, of course, be hospitable. We are the best place to work in the world for a reason because our team members are so hospitable. Everybody here wants to see everyone else be successful and is invested in their success. So I think, if that comes naturally to you, and Sean, I know this is something you believe in, sometimes that's something that you can't really teach, but it is something we look for when we hire.
And I think you can inspire it. It has to be a willingness.
Absolutely.
I think that's where I'm on I was recently on the Hampton advisory group, and the Hamptonality thing. It's kind of geeky, but it catches everybody.
It's contagious.
It's contagious, and you get it. And I think the same kind of thing with what you've talked about. You had a great quote about networking, how important that was, but there was a lot to it. As you said, it's okay to not know the answer.
Yeah.
But what?
Our business is so complex, right? It seems straightforward, but we know today the hospitality industry is a very sophisticated place to operate in. And so it's okay to say, hey, I don't know the answer, but you need to have the curiosity to think about what are some ways I could find out the answer, right? Could I test this? Could I do research? Who else can I talk to? It's one of the reasons, Sean, that we have owners advisory councils so that we can listen and get that type of input from our owner audiences and make sure that we're making the best decisions.
In fact, I had a meeting and I brought this up. It's your quote that I've got it written. It's going to be on my wall. And it's okay to not know the answer today, but it's not okay to not have a plan for finding the answer by tomorrow. And I think that's a thing that really, when you raise your hand in a corporate role like you have, you get noticed. And when someone asks you a question, like you said, you don't have to fake it and say, oh yeah, I think it's this, I think it's that. You say, I don't know, but I'm going to research that and I'll get back to you tomorrow. And I just thought that's such a good thing. And so I thank you for that because it's going to help me personally. I mean, I kind of know that, I think, but it's nice to have that reinforced by someone as a young professional like yourself. So thank you for that from me. So again, you talked about raising your hand. You said there's a couple things that people can do in Hilton to help them progress in their careers with Hilton.
Absolutely. So Hilton offers an MDP or a management development program, and that's focused on setting up graduating students for successful careers in hospitality. And then, of course, we also have a rotational analyst program. So if you're more interested in things like data analytics, which of course is a growing field and is incredibly important when you think about the massive amount of data that we have here at Hilton, that's another great kind of entry point into the larger Hilton world. But I think, the most important thing is to raise your hand and then to raise it again, because I will tell you, I didn't get the first job that I applied for here at Hilton. And between us two, Sean, I don't think I even got the second job I applied for here. So I think that's a theme in any career, just the willingness to be able to raise your hand again and again for opportunities that you're excited about. And also knowing that within a company as large as Hilton, the perfect opportunity that's going to be the perfect fit for you is out there. So again, it's a matter of that persistence and patience.
Oh, that's great. I think you're the epitome of a successful woman in business. You put your hand up, you took a step, you went for it. And I really do admire. All joking. I'm not joking. I'm really serious. I do admire you, and I think you have a long way to go. And Krista said has probably got another 5 or 10 years. So watch out. Whitney could be
Well,
running.
those are some big shoes to fill.
Yeah, but you certainly are on the right track. One of the cool things about being in this business is travel. I mean, your role within Hilton and a lot of people in Hilton. I mean, it's not always the easiest thing when you got to get on and you got to get on a phone and wait in the airline because you got delay on a flight or you got de-icing and all this stuff. So you have all those things. Probably not much de-icing in Memphis, but you do have to do those things. But where have you been? Have you been to any place that's kind of cool relative to business that you've traveled on?
Well, yeah. So probably, of course, one of the coolest places I've been was Dubai. We hosted a big conference there in 2019. So that's kind of a little hard to beat. We've done a lot of conferences and events in Miami, always a wonderful market. I have some gorgeous hotels down there. So I love to experience Cuban hospitality. It's kind of hard to beat Miami as well. Personally, I really adore spending time in Phoenix. I think it's such a great city. I think the weather there is hard to beat. One of my favorite hotel leaders, Glo Solario, is based in Phoenix. So that's always a bonus. And then I'll say, separately, weeks like this week, we're going to Oklahoma. And that might not sound like the most exotic, exciting destination, but I could not be more excited to go to Oklahoma because we have 2 new hotels there. So it's a big deal. It really doesn't get better than that.
I hear that Blake Shelton is going to now be a sponsor for Homewood since you're going. Oh, that's not true.
Fingers crossed, Sean. I don't know about that one.
This has been great to spend some time with you, and we're getting near the end, but I'd love for you to be able to say what you think to our listeners. What's important? We've got some young leaders, some people leading in the hospitality business, some people who don't know if they want to be in it, and some people who are committed to being in it. So what would you like to say to our listeners? Open forum for you.
Well, I think I love working in the hospitality industry because we get a chance to make people's lives better every day. And that's incredibly rewarding. And last year, I had this saying that I shared with our hotels, which was show up and smile. And I know it sounds remedial, but I really think it speaks to our goal here at Hilton to be friendly and be reliable. If you're a brand that people can count on and you have good intentions, opportunities will always come your way. So that's really a philosophy that we try to live by here, to be friendly, to be reliable, to show up and smile.
Show up and smile. It's so simplistic, but so important.
It's a game changer.
So, one thing I forgot, I wanted to make sure I covered. You did something with the ask. Can you spend a minute explaining ask? Because I think that's a real critical thing is people in our industry sometimes get looked over, and we certainly don't want that. And sometimes they just need some coaching. Like you as a young professional woman that's had some successes, what do you have to say to people?
About 3 years ago, I started a professional networking group for women. It's called Ask, ASK. And really the only qualification that, you have to do to join one of our events is you got to come with an ask for the group, because I really think that kind of that more direct approach to networking helps women overcome some of the unique challenges we face when it comes to our own career progression. So that ask can be anything from, hey, I'm looking for advice. I'm looking for a new job. I'm looking to hire someone. Anything that a woman needs to take that next step in her career. It's been a really, really great kind of passion project on the side that I do every month. And to date, we've helped a lot of women start businesses. We've helped women negotiate over $500,000 in additional annual compensation, and we've helped women find new jobs. So it's been really rewarding. It's something I'm passionate about. And I think every woman should feel empowered to ask for those things that she needs in order to be successful in her career.
And that's something Rick couldn't have told us. The fact that
Well, Rick has been incredibly supportive of me in my career. So he is a great sponsor as well as mentor.
That's great. Well, I really want to thank you for being here today. And you are an inspiration to me. I mean, I pulled up the picture and I showed it to 3 people. I said, that's what it is. She shows up and smiles, because that picture you sent, that's going to go on the pre-marketing for this podcast, this episode. So you did show up and smile. You were informative. You were very inspirational. And I thank you very much, Whitney, for joining us and our listeners for getting a chance to know you. And don't forget to ask.
Well, thank you, Sean. Thank you for having me today. Thank you for being such an incredible partner to me, and one of the leaders that I look up to the most. So I really appreciate getting to spend some time with you and your listeners.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And we're going to thank everybody for being in the audience today and listening. We appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Bed and Butter, the hospitality podcast produced in partnership with Southern Maine Community College. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so that you don't miss any episodes, and have a butterful day.